Hello friends, how are you doing today? In this video, we are going to see one of the critical architect's role called performance engineering architect. You might not have heard about this performance engineering architect if you have not worked in any of the big enterprises where the application needs very critical performance testing. Okay, so in this video, we are going to see what exactly the performance engineering architect means, what are all his or her roles and responsibilities, and in this cloud era, in modernizing your application or migrating your application to the cloud, what exactly this performance engineering architect role and how he is playing a critical role in any of the organization or enterprises. All right, so let's get into the details. All right, so when it comes to performance engineering architect, real-time roles and activities, what are all his roles and responsibilities, and what kind of knowledge or experience he has to get, and what kind of stakeholders that he or she has to interact with. Everything is going to be discussed in this chart. Let's go one by one. The first one is we are going to talk about the performance engineering architect's roles. So when it comes to performance engineering architect, he or she must understand the infrastructure, platform, and application. It's not going to be only one layer of the architecture. It has to be across all the layers of the architecture because the issue can occur anywhere, right? And the performance engineering architect must have experience on any one public cloud service providers, either it's AWS, Azure, or IBM Cloud or Google Cloud, and understand like what kind of services need to be used in infrastructure or platform or application layers so that he or she can focus on performance issues clearly. And he has to understand the metrics of the applications like the response time, latency, throughput, volume, and load details, etc. And another important thing the performance engineering architect must deal with is the performance engineering testing team roles and responsibilities, because this is the main team the performance engineering architect deals with or work with most of the times. And he or she has to guide the performance testing team to focus on the key metrics when they are executing the load test. And performance engineering architect has to review the performance test scenarios and test cases and give the ideas to execute the test cases in better way so that they can address the key performance problems that are going to be expected when the load test is performed. And also the person has to work with the development team to find out the performance areas. So when you work with the development team, you must discuss about what are all the chances or use cases that are expected to be performance tested. So this has to be understood by the performance engineering architect and discuss in detail with the development team and transition that knowledge to the performance testing team so that they will focus and create the test scenarios and test cases accordingly. And also the performance engineering architect has to document the history of applications throughput, response time, capacity, latency, all those information. The history of the application's performance is key for this performance engineering architect. And also the performance engineering architect will work with the solution architect during the application design phase. So in the early stage, if we involve the performance engineering architect, he or she will get to know in detail about the application, and it will be helpful when the application is developed, and when it goes to this performance testing phase, he can help the performance testing team to execute all the test cases better. And the performance engineering architect has to plan and design the scaled down performance testing. We will talk about what exactly the scaled down performance testing. Okay, and moving on to the next chart, the performance engineering architect has to work with multiple teams, different teams. I'm taking this first one as the DevOps team because when it comes to this setting up the CI/CD pipeline to execute the scaled down performance testing, the performance engineering architect has to work with the DevOps team to plan and create the environment with the automated CI/CD pipeline. So whenever the development team pushes the code, and it has to trigger the CI/CD pipeline and deploy the code in the performance environment separately, so that the scaled down test cases which were developed by the performance testing team will get executed on the test environment, so that the scaled down performance testing can be achieved. And why we are performing the scaled down performance testing? Because you can capture this performance issues at the early stage of the life cycle. Okay, that is the main goal of running this scaled down performance testing. So even before getting into the actual performance testing phase, whenever the development team checks in the code or commits the code, it will trigger the CI/CD pipeline, and the minimum volume, that scaled down volume of load, will get executed on the application, so that you can early detect this performance issue in the scaled down performance test environment. So basically, once the CI/CD pipeline is set up, this pipeline will push the load test to your scaled down performance environment and runs the miniature load test. And this way you can identify the load test bugs well ahead in the software development lifecycle. And the performance test engineering or performance engineering architect designs this infrastructure and platform by working with DevOps or operations team. And next thing is the performance engineering architect work with the production support team. So basically this production support team is a key team because they monitor all the production issues that are going to happen in the production, and they track everything, right? So during the time, if any performance related issue occurs, the performance engineering architect works with the production support team. And if he finds that the issue is related to the application code, he has to work with the application team. So basically the performance engineering architect will work with the application team, and he's a kind of liaison between application team and production team for all the performance related to issues. And performance engineering architect advises the business team based on the issue that he or she sees in the real-time transaction volume, real-time issue that occurs in the production. He learns that, he understands that, and he knows what exactly the root cause for that performance issue, and discuss with the business team so that they will think about that business scenario and change the details according to that, and provide the change request to this application to develop it. And also, when this performance engineering architect works with the production support team, he must know the regions where the application is running, and how many JVMs the applications are using, and which location the volume is coming more, and why. He has to understand all these things, because he has to know which location is the high volume location, and what kind of resources needed to address this issue if that happens in that location. And also, like when it comes to this metrics like CPU usage, memory consumption, and resource utilization by load, all those information must be understood by this performance engineering architect when he or she works with the production support team and application team and business team. And next thing is the performance engineering architect must work with the business architect, and he has to have this strong business knowledge about the domain and application. And this person, performance engineering architect, works as a liaison between business team and development team. Why he has to do that? Because he has to understand the business use cases which are related to the performance, and explain this information by collecting from the business team and transferring to the development team in a better way. And the performance engineering architect has to understand the business requirement, and in the business requirement, what are all the performance impact use cases, and explain everything to the performance testing team as well as with the development team. And he has to get the data details, volume details from the business, and transfer the details to this two important teams, that application development team and the performance testing team. And he should not stop there. He has to analyze these metrics with the past history of the info, and advise the performance impact to the business team as well. And moving on to the next chart, the performance engineering architect has to work with application architect. So he or she has to have this clear understanding of each project and their dependent components in the performance aspects. And the performance engineering architect work as a liaison between application team and performance testing team to share the impacted areas, so that the performance testing team can understand those areas in detail and create the test scenarios and test cases accordingly. So when there is a doubt about business use case that we received from the business team, the performance engineering architect is the go-to person for the performance testing team to get to know about the details of the business use case that has the performance impact. And he has to work with the application architect to review the code and see how this code can handle the volume and what kind of performance metrics has to be addressed while developing the code. All those discussions will happen with the application architect by this performance architect person. And the performance architect will interact with each individual in the project team. If there are like 5 projects running in one sprint, this person, performance engineering architect, sits with this each 5 team and understand where exactly the performance impact scenario comes in and what kind of functions are written, so that he can easily understand from performance point of view and advise the development team and as well as the performance testing team. And he will explain about the components and APIs to the performance testing team as well. Suppose if application development team is creating an API to execute multiple times to create the volume, this has to be explained to the performance testing team by this performance engineering architect, so that performance testing can create a similar kind of dummy API to execute the load on the application. And performance engineering architect has to work with the technical architect. So when it comes to technical architect, the team or the person who is in the technical architect team will deal with the software, tools, and technologies required for helping out this performance testing team. So as a performance engineering architect, this person will work with the technical architect, and he works as a liaison between performance testing team and technical architect team, so that he can convey the messages from the performance testing team to the technical architect, so that technical architect can build the hardware or software required for running this load test. And also he has to work with the technical architect and plan the software and hardware requirements for running the load test. And moreover, this performance engineering architect set up this performance environment with the required servers and resources, and explain this architecture detail to the performance testing team so that they can mimic this real-time production environment in the performance environment and execute the test cases. And next thing, the performance engineering architect will work with the data architect. So data is the base for the performance testing, and this performance testing team can get the data and execute. That's all they will do it. But who understand the curated data, who understand the whether the data is refined, who understands this, whether the data is mimicking the real-time production data, all those informations must be known by this performance engineering architect. So he has to have a strong understanding of the data needed for running the load test, and he works as a liaison between performance testing team and data architect. So data architects focus on quality of data, where the data has to be collected from different sources, what kind of extraction happens on the data. All those stuffs are dealt by this data architect. And the performance engineering architect works with the data architect to understand the data needs, data types, and data details, and convey that information and get the data details to the performance testing team, so that performance testing team can use the data and execute the test. And next thing is the performance engineering architect work with operations architects. So when it comes to the operations, you always know about the automation and monitoring, all those stuffs, right? So the performance engineering architect must work with the operation architect to know more about the environment and what kind of API calls, components needed for running this high volume transaction test. So performance engineering architect work closely with the operation architect, and he works as a liaison between performance testing team and operations team. Get the information from the operation architect and then convey the information or share the information with the performance testing team, so that they will use the operations details for executing a well performance test. And he has to understand, execute key environment setup. So when you set up this performance testing environment, the performance engineering architect must have this environment configuration details so that he can tweak and mimic this production environment in the performance environment, so that the performance testing team can execute these test cases without any interruptions. And main thing is, the performance engineering architect must know the tools, scripts, and technologies required for running the load test, so that he can help the performance engineering testing team. And what are all the automated process for executing this performance test? This information must be gathered and kept by this performance engineering architect, so that he can share it to the performance testing team to execute an automated test cases. And the performance engineering architect must know how to mimic these use cases and communicate this to the performance testing team. And finally, the performance engineering architect works with CTO to share the KPIs before the change implementation and after validating the requirements with the load. So this is very crucial and critical roles of the performance engineering architect, because he is the one suggest a lot of performance related issues to the CTO, and he is the single point of contact for all performance use cases and issues. And if any new project comes into your organization, he is the performance engineering architect is the single point of contact for CTO to know about whether this can be implemented, so that application can perform well and application will go live without any issues. All those information will be discussed with the performance engineering architect by this CTO. And once after collecting the metrics, results, everything from the performance testing team, performance test results, executions, performance testing team shares all this to the performance engineering architect, and architect understands in the multiple areas. The performance testing team will focus only on the execution, creation, execution, and capturing the result, comparing the result with the previous results, everything. But the performance engineering architect only knows the connected components, like how this works in the environment, whether it is handling the infrastructure platform, and whether the issues occurring in the infrastructure side or platform side, or how that is handled in the performance environment, how that can be learned in the performance environment, and how that can be addressed if there are similar issues going to occur in the production environment. And he is the person, he suggests the changes needed for the next implementation based on the understanding that he worked with the business architect, data architect, technology architect, and operations architect. And he views everything from the top, and he gets all the details and share it to CTO. And also he focus on the forecasting and budgeting details. For example, if a new project comes in, the performance engineering architect forecast whether this application can be go live in during these many days, these many details needed, and how the budget works for executing these performance test cases, test scenarios, and what kind of environment setup cost, infrastructure setup cost, platform setup cost. All those information are held by this performance engineering architect and share it to the CTO, so that CTO can make a right decision. And also when it comes to the bugs, like any issues occur in the production, any issues occur in the performance test environment, he captures the details and see whether that will affect in production or not, and he will provide the bug details to CTO, so that CTO will view that and then make the right decision to fix that issue and move on to the next steps. And also the resource forecast, like if he needs a special guidance from the operations team, and if he needs a person to configure and support the performance testing team, and any performance test resources are needed, those level of details will be shared, shared by this performance engineering architect to the CTO. And also he does this skill forecast. the special skills needed by the operations team or DevOps team and performance testing team to execute well planned performance test cases are going to be forecasted by this performance engineering architect and share it to the CTO. And that's all about the performance engineering architect's roles, responsibilities, and how he or she interacts with multiple stakeholders in the organization. Everything has been explained in this video. So you might have learnt about what exactly the performance engineering architect means, what are his or her roles and responsibilities, and what are all the key stakeholders this performance engineering architect deals with in an organization. All those details in this video. And we are going to make this kind of real-time roles and responsibility video of multiple architects in this channel. And if you like this video, give a thumbs up and share it to your friends. And one more thing, I provided the link in the description below to download this chart. You can download and make use of it. Take care. Bye.